Excellent. So we'll have the usual 10 or 20 seconds before the first people jump on, but I was on yesterday with Dr. Ruth Roberts, who was wonderful.
Oh, it
Have
was
you heard her?
I haven't.
She developed the crock pot recipe, which was an early crock pot method of making home prepared food.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she was just so funny and so entertaining and informative. I really enjoyed her.
Did you share some recipes?
No, she has actually a book and a course. But she shared some stories and hey Janet
Hi,
and
Janet.
things. Yes, it's chilly here. The wind is whipping around about 40 miles an hour. Um
Um,
and but next week it's going to be 80. So
I saw that. I was like, what? We
yeah,
just
because you're
this morning.
down in New York City, right?
No, no, no. I still have my place in New York City. I'm actually in the Catskills.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
so
you're
it's a little
getting
chilly here.
wind and yeah.
Yeah, it's chilly. We just started a bunch of seeds this morning, like in
Oh,
the seed
great.
trays. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're starting them indoors. Probably won't be
Indoors,
overly.
obviously, yeah.
Yeah, doing a
Gardening time.
lettuce and bok choy and cucumbers and catnip
Mhm.
for cats, and that's it for now. But I think I'm gonna buy some more seeds.
Yeah. And do you do some herbs and such as well?
Yeah, we also we have 8 acres and we have a lot of naturally just like we have like a lot of wild like growing things. Hey guys, knock it off. Sorry, my cats decided to fight right next to me. They're usually really good together, but like they have their moments.
Well, that's okay. It's normal cat stuff. They're
Yeah.
having an argument, so it
Yeah.
needs to
I
take
don't
center
usually break it
stage.
out, but yeah.
Yes. So
How we
welcome,
doing with the
welcome
peoples?
everyone. Pop in and let us know. Hi, Amy. Where
Oh,
you're
hi Amy.
Yeah, we know Amy's out on the West Coast, right?
I thought Florida.
Florida? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
I
oh,
could be wrong,
maple
but
syrup. Oh, Janet. Homemade maple syrup is the best. There is nothing like it. Nothing. And maple sugar candy and such. Just awesome. So welcome everybody. Fort Lauderdale, yes. I was talking earlier this morning with Susan Thixton, who was eagerly awaiting the arrival of the guys who were servicing her air conditioner so she could.
oh, hi Michelle. Oh, sorry to cut you off.
That's
I,
okay.
I see some I see some names I recognize,
Names of
so
people we know. So welcome
yeah.
everyone to another episode of Facebook Live in support of the Healthy Dog Expo. HealthyDogExpo.com. Someone will put it in the links where you can grab your tickets and you can come meet this awesome lady that I'm sitting next to in person, sitting next to virtually, that is. This is Hanna, and she's from Evermore. And today I'm really excited because we're going to dive into the backstory of Evermore, which I don't know if all of you have heard, but it is awesome. So, Hanna, take it away. Tell us where you're
Sure.
from.
Yeah. So, first of all, the reason I'm doing this is last time we did this, if any of you were here, we talked a lot about, we went in depth with organic stuff, and my mom watches these.
Science and everything. Cool.
Yeah. My mom watches these and she's like, honey, that was really great. It was really detailed, but you don't talk about your company at all. And I was like, okay, next time I promise I'll talk about the company. So that's why I'm going to go into the backstory now.
Your mother
So
always runs you. You have to accept
she's very supportive. So we've been around since 2009. So that's 14 years. And as a lot of you know, we were one of the very first companies making a gently cooked food. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say we might have coined the term gently cooked
it. Hmm.
because I'm pretty sure we were the first ones using it. But the company started, I was a dog walker back in Brooklyn, and my now business partner is a health supportive chef. She went to the Natural Gourmet Institute, which is just all about health supportive cooking. And I think they've been rolled into a different school now. I think it's called the Institute for Culinary Arts, but at the time it was the Natural Gourmet Institute. And I was Allison's dog walker. And already that sounds like a good story. Like a dog walker and a health supportive chef get together, they start a dog food company, great. But that's not what happened. Another one of my dog walking clients, she was slightly older woman. She had this amazing Afghan hound that I walked, And she actually had what I like to call an underground dog food company. And she started this dog food company when she was living in Tribeca after 9/11. Um, her dog at the time, another Afghan hound. It's amazing how people like get their dogs that they're
Yeah.
really into. And she was an Afghan hound person, which was really cool because you never see those in New York City, or very many places at all. But at any rate, her after 9/11, a lot of people, even though they were supposed to evacuate, a lot of people stayed in the neighborhood. And what happens is that the neighborhood became kind of a cancer cluster for dogs. I mean, much, much later it became for humans, but dogs, as we know, have shorter lifespans, more sensitive systems. And her dog got diagnosed with cancer. I believe it was lymphoma, and was given a 6-month prognosis. She would not take that. She would not accept that. And she researched everything she could, herbal medicine, acupuncture, diet. And, she really landed on diet and did a lot of research and started cooking for her own dog. He lived for another 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and during that time, she was also a very bohemian type and walked dogs in the neighborhood and was kind of like the neighbor, like the dog lady in the neighborhood. So during that time, she actually started like cooking for other people in the neighborhood and
Oh,
had started this like little kind of underground dog food company and had scaled her business to a certain point. Like she worked with 2 retailers in the city and had like, she was sort of poised to grow, but never like really from like a business standpoint had the acumen to fully grow it. But I met her because she moved to my neighborhood in Brooklyn, Red Hook, and she herself got sick. She had pneumonia during the winter when I was dog walking, and I kind of got flagged down. I was like, "Hey, can you help this lady walk her dog?" So I started walking her dog, and at the time she was boarding like 4 other dogs. So I was walking like 5 dogs a day for like the 2 weeks
you
over
were the
Christmas.
classic New York City dog walker with
I
all those leashes and
I actually, yeah, my regular dog walking business, I would never walk more than like 3 or 4 dogs at a time.
Mhm.
I wasn't one of like the people with like 10 dogs, but like this was absolutely crazy. Hi, Tracy. Um, so after she recovered and all the other dogs went away, she kept me on as her dog walker, even though she didn't really need a dog walker. I just thought she was like a little lonely. Anyway, I was her dog walker for a while. And then one day I got a call out of the blue in the morning. Her voice was slurring and she told me she was having a stroke.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, did you call 911? No, she hadn't called 911. So I made her call 911. But that just kind of shows you she was like a bit isolated in the world, like because her dog walker is like the first person she called.
Mhm.
From that moment forward, I kind of ended up in the situation where I sort of became her caretaker, like took on the role of like a daughter and helped her manage, taking care of her dog, making sure bills got paid and everything. And initially it was supposed to be, it wasn't a horrible stroke. She was supposed to go through rehab and, be back in about 6 weeks. So during this time, my now business partner, Allison, she had been in Florida. She was thinking about moving to California and she was coming back to New York for what she had thought was going to be a short period of time and was looking for a place to stay. Uh, a mutual friend was like, "Hey, this situation's open. Maybe you can sublet in this apartment and help cook dog food," because she was a health supportive personal chef. So she accepted this and seemed like a great situation for all. Allison, who's a very warm, giving, helping people, she likes nurturing others, as a chef would, agreed to do this. While she was driving back to New York from Florida, Mia, that was the name of the woman, had another stroke.
Mhm.
And this one was the sort of like catastrophic strokes that you hear about. She was left unable to speak or swallow or move any part of her body except for like one of her hands a little bit. And it was completely devastating. But again, they didn't really know what her long-term prognosis was going to be. So we stepped in a more kind of hands-on capacity. Again, I was sort of in the situation where I was actually her healthcare proxy. I
Huh.
was her power of attorney. Like I was somehow, I mean, I was like this 28-year-old kid. Now I think of 28 years old as a kid. When I was younger, I thought I was an adult. um,
But
but
here you were, never having experienced any of these sort of things before,
it
and
was
stepping up for someone who trusted you.
It was a really intense situation, like, and it was just yeah, I it's funny, at this point in my life, if this situation presented myself, I don't know how I would handle it, but, I was in it and just it felt like the right thing to do at the time.
Mhm.
Anyway, so we're in the situation for longer than we thought. We were basically taking care of this woman's life and her life's work, which was me
Mhm.
making this dog food. And during this time, Allison's dog Connor, he was a 6 year old. We like to call him a Schlab. He was a Shepherd Lab mix.
Mhm.
He started thriving on the food. Like, and this dog had never had a bad meal in his life. He
Right.
was raw fed. She'd cook for him sometimes. Like, the dog ate well, but he was getting at a point where he was 6. He was putting on a little extra weight. His stomach was a little dicey,
Mhm.
on the food that he was eating. And it's just like the weight kind of like melted off of him and his coat like glistened. He was just and his poops were just like so much better. So we knew that there was like really something there with this type of food. And it got to the point where it became very clear Mia was never going to recover. And we had this and she did get to the point where she could communicate it by like and like making gestures that you can't see because
Mhm.
she like communicated by kind of like tapping on a placard where we had like letters, so she'd spell out words.
So
But
she could still process.
oh yeah, she was very like she was still cognizant, she was still there, she was
Mhm.
pretty sharp. Like she had some other neurological stuff, but she could
Sure.
process what was going on. Um, and we basically sat down with her and we're like, with your blessing, we'd like to continue this, but we're gonna have to start over. Like the way she was running her business was
Right. Well,
let's
she was the underground food lady.
yeah, it was a little unkosher, let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so we researched very quickly like what you needed to do to make dog food legally,
Mhm.
registered with the Department of Agriculture, did
Mhm.
nutritional analysis, we sent stuff off to labs and realized pretty quickly that like while the formula was a great start, it actually was a little unbalanced.
Mhm.
So, between ourselves and consultants, we got things where they needed to be to feel
Right.
really
Right.
confident in the formula. Then we sent it off to the Department of Agriculture to register things and learn the hard way that burdock, nettles, and rose hips are not considered, they're not AFCO.
They're not approved
So they're
ingredients
they're
defined.
not approved ingredients, which is funny because in some other states they'd be fine because some states you need to use AFCO approved ingredients.
Right.
And then in other states, you can actually use ingredients that aren't AFCO but generally recognized as safe by the FDA.
Mhm.
So it's like, I just wish there'd be a federal standard. Um,
Exactly.
but anyway, we learned the hard way that like this is that you got to that there's a bigger set of rules that you need to play by
Mhm.
that we had no idea. And we were like, burdock is like a staple of macrobiotic cooking, and like nettles and rose hips so good, like they bring so much to the table. But we trimmed down the formula. We actually ended up replacing those with like blueberries and pumpkin
Mhm.
seeds.
Something
Then
people
there's
don't
yeah,
understand.
just things that could do things that were allowed and things that kind of brought some things to the table that we thought were similar. And the formulas at that point were a little starchier than they are now. So we cut white potatoes, we reduced the grain inclusion a little bit. So we
Mhm.
definitely did a lot of tweaks to
Sure.
bring us to where we are today. But so we like pounded the pavement, we got things going. We were in within before. Well, I should probably get to this part of the story. So Mia ended up getting transferred to like a rehab facility, which is basically a
Mhm.
nursing home
Yep.
uh, out out in Long Island, and would visit her regularly. And 9 months after the original stroke, she passed away. But before she did, within like a couple of days of her dying, I actually managed to bring her dog, Books, down.
Oh, that's great.
So she got I like tear up every time I tell this
Oh,
story.
how could you not?
But I managed to bring Books down to say goodbye. And first he got to visit her in the nursing home, and then I took him out to the beach, which her window, like, look, I like keep gesturing with my hands so you can't see, but her window looked out over the beach, and she got to see him running on the beach. And
Oh, that's great.
so she said, and she could speak again at this point though, and she just said it was like really really beautiful. And then a couple of days later, She passed away.
Mhm.
And
That's what an awesome gift to give her.
I think
It really is. Well,
it's yeah, it was a tragic way to start
she
a
gave you
company,
the
but
gift of, this whole mission that you've just taken and run with.
I'm so glad that we were able to
You're
carry
able to
this on.
do it.
But it's interesting because this wasn't something we chose. It wasn't a lot of people when they start companies like this, they like sit down with business plans, they have 2 years worth of savings, like they know what they're doing. We had zero idea, but like we had passion. Like with Allison's
Mhm,
background, she was so when she came to do this, she'd actually just come back she went to this summer camp in Pennsylvania. It was at Camp Ballet. It's like this arts camp for kids, but
mhm.
they were transferring everything off of Cisco food service
Oh, wow.
to fresh, locally sourced food,
Yeah.
just at like a much higher standard. So we were able to do this with our company. Allison and I are both like
Nice.
profound animal lovers. Like we really do love animals, and we wanted to make sure that animals were being honored in anything that we made because there's a lot of meat involved in good dog food.
Yeah, there certainly is, and Cisco, for those of you who don't know, that's a very, I'm gonna say, kind of lower end restaurant supply, so, think places where you can get a bologna sandwich, or they have
Yeah, and
Oscar Mayer products, or
or like hospital
yeah,
cafeterias.
Wonder Bread, that kind of not chef style, not nutrition style, not organic, just basic factory food.
Yeah. The funny thing about all of that was, Allison had done this, but prior to coming to this, when she was in culinary school, she was externing at the Gramercy Tavern,
Oh,
which a
nice.
lot of you've probably heard of. And she got offered a permanent position running the sous vide station.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, no, 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 I don't want to do that, too much meat. And she'd also lived in Vermont for a little while, and she
Mhm.
was offered somebody wanted to start a raw dog food company with her. She's
Oh
like,
my
no, no, no,
gosh.
no, I don't want to do that. Too much meat. This is all before, and then I guess this was the third time where she accepted, like, okay, this is this
Well,
is
the
clearly,
universe kept bringing
yeah.
forward more.
The
Go
universe
ahead, let me meet.
kept bringing meat to her, and I think we really do engage with like a lot of welfare organizations and are very committed to that. So I think not to be like, oh, the universe, but there is something that our paths were kind of meant to
Sure.
speak to. Our animals, they need meat, and if we're going to do it, we should do it right, and we should use the platform that we have as a brand to share that and to share
Mhm.
what people can do to be better about
Right,
meat.
right.
And one thing I will say is, Allison is also very passionate about pigs and volunteered at a pig rescue for a while. So I
Mhm.
think that's where we draw the line. We get asked for pork formulas all the time,
Yeah, you're
and
probably unlikely to do a pork formula.
I'm sorry everyone who asks for it because we do get requests, but I think
Mhm.
I think just based on that, we're not
Yeah.
we're not. Oh, I
Well,
am getting a question. I'm just gonna look at that question really
which
fast.
one? Oh, here, let me show it for you. This one?
Oh yeah. So zinc is like the only area where on the current iteration of our formulas we fell like a little bit short of the AFCO numbers.
Mhm.
Like we're in what is technically there is like a permitted over under where you can not meet the numbers, but if you're like within a statistical range of it, like they'll kind of let you get away with it. It's just so confusing.
Mhm.
But anyway, we're a little bit below. And zinc gluconate's an interesting one. It's actually the most studied form of supplemental zinc. And if you, as a human, are taking any form of zinc supplement, that's probably what you're taking. And if you hear the term zinc mineral salts, it's the same thing. So, zinc, right, naturally occurring mineral. It binds to gluconic acid, which is just basically that's also naturally occurring.
Mhm.
It's glucose. It's fermented glucose. So it's way less. It's a naturally occurring thing. It's
Right.
not like it's so a lot of chemists wouldn't consider it synthetic in the sense of a lot of these vitamins are. It is synthesized in a lab. So that is the only quote synthetic that we
Mhm.
are using right now.
Good.
We'd love to move away from it. We're looking at different options.
Yeah.
And it's not on to be perfectly honest, like we want everything to come from food, but it's also a form that we are fully comfortable adding.
Yeah.
Uh, So that's where we are with that right now. Right now we're working on cat food, and that's a little bit more
Oh
complicated.
my gosh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
in
But
terms of fully
good
staying away
questions,
synthetic. What? Sorry.
I said good question though,
Yeah, it's a great question because we
because
really,
you know,
really, really try to
we
go.
all strive to
Yeah.
use food, not supplements.
And frankly, if we were to go heavier on the meat, we do about a 65% meat inclusion.
Mhm.
And if we were to go up for that 80% meat, we would definitely, we would hit those zinc numbers. But the
Mhm.
reality is the dogs that eat our food and do well on our food do amazingly on our food. And we kind of don't want to have like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind
Right.
of approach to it. Our food is pretty low carb. Like the chicken and beef I'd say that they're moderately low carb, and then our turkey and our lamb are have the same carbohydrate levels as basically our raw food, but
Yeah.
we're not that 80-10-10. It's a different, it's just fundamentally different. And I think a dog that doesn't do well on an 80-10-10, I think whether it's cooked or raw is less of the issue
Yeah.
than just the general macronutrient breakdown of the
I
food.
certainly would agree with that. And we have a lot of information going around the community, uh, spurred by my friend Susan Garrett's experience with one of her dogs that really does better on a moderate protein, higher carb. And we took that dog's carbs up into numbers that many raw feeders would disagree with. But the dog's response to that is incontrovertible. I mean, she could not function eating one of Canada's leading raw foods, but eating something based on that, but with carbs, she's out there running agility and winning.
Yeah, I think it's just it really as we've had this conversation so many times. It depends on the dog, but what we're seeing is in this space, you do have cooked foods that are going more towards that 80-10-10,
Mhm.
or you have foods that are like super starchy. So I think what I like to think is I think we're a good common sense middle ground.
Mhm.
That's really how I perceive our food. And okay, back to I don't even remember where we were. I saw the question and
Good.
got completely
Yeah.
distracted by
Yes.
answering
So
the
there will
question.
never be pork. There will
Yeah,
never
never
be
be
a
pork.
pork
Oh,
one.
animal welfare. That was sort
Right.
of where I
That
wanted
was
to.
where
That
we
was
were
where
going.
I said we were going to go last week.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's amazing how it's kind of entered into the conversation where it hasn't been. It seems like more and more the idea of animal welfare is becoming something consumers want,
Yeah.
and it's becoming something that more and more companies are making available. However, the issue there is as soon as something, oh, thank you, Michelle. So because it's something that consumers want, and there's a lot of market research about this, a lot of companies are starting to greenwash or humane wash. It's humane
Mhm.
washing, so
Right.
there's a lot of companies making these claims. And there's a lot of vague language out there, like farm fresh, like local farms, you know family farms, like pretty much all farms are quote family farms, because a lot of
Mhm.
big corporations actually, they contract with individual farmers.
Yeah.
Farm fresh doesn't mean anything. Like local doesn't mean everything, because everyone is local to somewhere. So language like that, vague language that kind of evokes the idea of
Mhm.
happy animals and small farms, doesn't necessarily tell the whole picture. So what we do, and I've come in on the past, and we're just so specific. What we do is we just tell people where our meat is coming from.
Mhm.
I think it's really important that people can have the option to know where their meat is coming from, to research and look at the individual practices. And for us, cows are easy, right? We switched to
Mhm.
100% grass fed a really long time ago. I
Yeah.
think when we started, we weren't 100% grass fed, but we were the cows were on pasture for their entire lives. It was just they were given supplemental feed. But
Mhm.
as soon as we could afford to go to 100% grass fed, we did. And that is so much better for the animals. I'm going to like my nose. Like I'm getting sniffly. I don't have tissue, and like that, my allergies are. So everyone, please don't be grossed out by that. But so I think people, when they're thinking about, the sorry about that, I got distracted by my sniffles. So when we're talking about cows and grass fed, one thing people don't realize is that cows that are grain fed, even if they're staying on pasture,
Mhm.
that grain creates like awful situations in their guts.
Yeah.
They can get these like horrible infections. It's uncomfortable. They get gassy, and the quality of their meat is also different. So
That
100% grass fed cows. Of my I got brought a tissue by someone else who's in the room. Cows that are 100% grass fed have much better omega ratios than cows that,
yeah.
and sheep too, actually. This also applies to sheep,
Mhm.
than animals that are raised on grain. And, this is something you've probably read in the news about and like seen these like studies about for a while. But the cool thing was when we actually switched from that grain finished to the 100% grass fed, we lab test every batch,
Yeah.
and we don't always run omegas, but of course we were going to run our omegas for this.
Sure.
It was dramatic. Like the difference that we saw, it was so dramatic how it completely changed to the point where we could change our fish oil inclusion.
Nice.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
it
and fish oil, I always worry about, becoming rancid or not, losing quality.
the
So, I don't wanna overestimate the omega-3s that I think are going in there, and I
yeah,
feel so much more comfortable with it coming from the beef.
oh yeah, and the thing about fish oil, I will say the way that we use it is we order it in smaller containers.
Of course.
So it gets stored, in refrigeration. So it's like never around for that long. But yeah, that with any oil,
Yeah,
or any fat, really, rancidity is a major issue.
omega.
So it is very important that you manage that correctly when you're producing a food. I feel like I don't a lot of foods out there, like kibbles. I don't know if you sometimes smell foods and you can like smell rancidity,
Oh,
and
god. Well, kibble to me smells awful no matter how you slice it.
even dog treats. Like I'm not going to name the company or companies, but I remember Allison just got adopted a new dog like a while ago, and she was trying all these different treats, even from good companies,
Yeah.
and treats with like a higher fat content would have this
Mhm.
like rancid smell to them sometimes. It's like
Yeah.
you have to be careful about that.
I have
But
to
back,
say, cocoa therapy people, the lady sent me some of their, it's called cocoa milk bones, and it's made with coconut oil, and I think I currently have, like, the pumpkin and ginger. Oh my god, it smells amazing. And something that's a treat with coconut fat that I would feed every day, hands down.
because it maintains
Yeah. It's just they're just amazing. So, shameless plug for one of my other
for
sponsors.
cocoa therapy. Yeah, and packaging matters too. I don't know how it's
Yes.
packaged, but with
Yeah,
with
it's a solid plastic, but it doesn't totally feel like plastic, and it's a very, firmly sealing Ziploc package. It's not just like a Ziploc bag that you put a sandwich in where, okay, you do that and it's sorta closed. No, this grips.
Yeah, that is really important. I think, there is we all want to be more like eco-friendly and sustainable in our
Yeah.
packaging. It's really important, but sometimes that can come at the expense of like the longevity of the product. So, I think it's important to like refrigerate or freeze products where the packaging can be more porous.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and packaging on fresh food, whether it be cooked or raw, is one of the most important things I look at when I'm evaluating a brand.
and it is tough. Like it is
It's
tough to
tough.
do the right thing. But back to
That's
cows.
animal welfare.
Back to animal welfare. So it's interesting. I know in the past I've talked about certifications, and they're not like 100% necessary. But one thing you'll notice if you're looking at our formulas is that our beef and our lamb we don't currently make any certification claims on that,
Mhm,
and our poultry we do. And there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, when you are looking at beef and lamb, they are raised across like hundreds and hundreds of acres, and
mhm.
these certifications happen by acreage. So a lot of times what'll happen is ranchers that maybe have some of their acreage certified don't have all of their acreage certified because they have to pay, and we
Like,
actually, yeah, they have to pay by the acre certified. When you're part of one of these certification programs, there is payment to the certifying bodies involved. So even you can find a supplier that even though the cows or lamb are treated the same across the board,
Mhm.
some of them will be certified and some of them won't. And the only real difference is going to be the price. Um, because the suppliers that we work with have this sort of mixed status. They know a lot of their customers don't require that certification, so they're not going
Mhm.
to pay for it if they don't need to. And what we do, it's very important to us to be able to provide a solution, right? When we're buying parts for these larger animals, we're looking for, okay, what aren't you really selling to people? And perfectly good parts of the animal, but like maybe they're trim, maybe it's not a popular cut, something great for the dog, but we're providing a solution to those
Mhm.
ranchers so that we can help them get a fair price for meat that might otherwise be sitting in a freezer forever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And as you said earlier, honoring the animal, using the whole animal. If it's, heart or spleen or, organs that people don't really wanna eat to any great extent, they're fine for the dogs, we
they're
we can incorporate them in a thoughtful manner.
Exactly. And we do heart and liver, which actually with the paleo movement for
Yeah.
people
Oh,
actually
yeah.
have gotten a little bit more
Is
competitive.
that where liver is going these days?
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I mean, just like the hardcore paleo people are getting a little
Sure.
bit more into organ meats. But I
Yeah.
mean, for the most part, yeah, we're providing a solution to these ranchers by buying these animal parts.
Mhm.
And for bigger animals like cows and lamb, it's an easier proposition. But we don't want to limit ourselves to parts of the ranch because for
Mhm.
obvious reasons, we want to be able to take advantage of as much as we these situations as we can. Now, chickens and turkey are a different story, and that's where we have our welfare certification.
Mhm.
And
That one.
people who are like vegetarian or vegan or transitioning there, I think they have this idea that somehow eating poultry is better than eating red meat, just from like a humane standpoint. And I
Mhm.
think it's because we have this bias towards mammals, right? And that we think that the mammals somehow suffer more. But the reality is
The birds.
that the birds suffer more because of the amount of room required for these livestock. For the most part, cows and sheep lead much better lives and much longer lives than poultry do. Poultry are raised in much denser operations and treated much less like the sentient beings that they are. So that's why we've always gone for relatively high welfare poultry. Now our goal, and we're not there yet for a lot of reasons, is to go for like 100% pastured on the poultry,
Yeah.
which is really hard to obtain. We've been trying for like a decade,
Yeah.
but we're getting closer to finding a good, reliable source, and that's what we
Yeah.
want.
'Cause that's
So,
that's gotta be a challenge is you gotta identify a farm or farms that can provide what you're looking for, and then you have to say, "Okay, I need this quantity every single month," because
yeah,
people become reliant upon, feeding that product.
Yeah, and the issue there is, first of all, there is less, we use breast, thigh, heart, and liver. And they're much smaller animals, the
Right.
poultry. So it's not the same situation where you have all these scraps to go around, right?
Mhm.
And then when you're looking at pastured operations, they're very few and far between.
Yeah.
And they're either, we're either low volume, right? Or for like the truly like magnificent farms, we're high volume and we either can't get the supply or if it's like there's only like two or three larger pastured operations out there, but
Yeah.
it's we're either too big or too small, let's put it that
Yeah.
way. And because it is such a much different process, the reality is pastured is so much more expensive, and
Mhm.
we pass the cost along obviously, but there is a limit. Everyone wants it, but it's also the
Yeah.
point. It's like what is the ceiling here,
Right.
in terms of what people will go for. But that said, where we are now is we are gap 3 on our poultry, which means on our chicken, which means that they can go outdoors.
Mhm.
And we've taken something called the Better Chicken Commitment. And what that is it's a newer initiative that was spearheaded by 10 different animal welfare organizations.
Oh, wow.
So these organizations all got together and they created a list of standards And the standards, there's two different versions, but basically the standards have to do with additional room for chickens,
Mhm.
enrichments, that they have to have. And the biggest one is breed. Well, I think there's two that I think are like the most important. One is genetics.
Mhm.
So changing breeds to higher welfare breeds,
Mhm.
because what a lot of people don't realize is one of the most intrinsically difficult things and cruel things about the chicken that we eat, is they've been bred the Cornish cross, which is the most common meat breed. They've been bred to have these like very large breasts, because
We all like that.
that's we all. It's funny. I actually like dark meat, but
Well,
most
and
people.
cooking too, dark meat, thick chicken thighs hold up better. They're harder to overcook. They're
More
better
nutritious.
for more nutritious. They're better for, the average home, but no, everybody gets the boneless chicken breast.
It's we were just talking about this with a potential poultry supplier the other day, and it's we also had this low fat craze.
Mhm.
Like everyone wants low fat, low fat, low fat, and we actually have to use breast, in our chicken formula and our turkey formula, because we do need some lower fat formulas. We do need
Sure.
to keep those fat levels down. Um, but anyway, these Cornish birds are bred to have like such big breasts that they can tip over, they break their legs, they have these horrible heart problems. They're also bred to grow really, really fast. And they're slaughtered at 45 days.
Wow.
So they have very short, very miserable packed lives. The part of the better chicken commitment is moving over to higher welfare breeds. So these hardier birds that grow slower, can be outside. Because that's the other thing with the Cornish birds, is they don't even want to go outside. They just kind of don't move around that much. But so part of it is the higher welfare breeds, and I think that is so critical.
Yes.
And hopefully the American diet will there'll be less breasts to go around, but
Mhm.
hopefully we'll move to accommodate that. And another piece of it that I think is really important, nobody wants to think about how an animal dies. But right now the way most chickens are slaughtered involves like an electric stunning, before they're slaughtered, and that's like really painful. And this newer, the commitment requires something called controlled atmospheric stunning, CAS. And basically that's sort of pumping CO2 in, and that kind of just puts the chickens to sleep
Mhm.
before they're slaughtered. So it's a much less traumatic
Yeah,
experience.
chickens with their air sacs and such, their respiratory system is different from that of mammals. And yeah, that would be much more humane if they were just kind of dull and not aware.
Yeah, and that's basically the supplier that we're working with now. They've taken the better chicken commitment, and they're in the process of moving their flocks over. They already have a heritage breed program, but it's actually not that
Mhm.
they don't raise enough of those birds for us to use.
Yeah,
But they are, they're already doing the controlled atmosphere stunning. They already have the enrichments. They already have the space.
yeah.
So in the grand scheme
It's
of
more
things,
birds having space,
yeah, it
not
really
being cramped on
the
each other.
so the thing about this commitment is some big companies have taken it.
Really?
Like
Who?
Tyson,
Oh,
a lot of fast food places. Like you can go on their website, like bcc.com, and it's supposed to be implemented by 2026. Um,
and
and
implementation, when you think about changing buildings and stuff, that's a reasonable time to accomplish that because the scale of these farms is huge.
It's huge. I think the hardest part, honestly, is gonna be switching over the flock genetics. I think that's gonna be kind of a big piece of it. But, like, I think McDonald's has taken it, like KFC. I think, like, really big companies have taken it.
That's
Um,
mind-boggling.
yeah, and I wanna stress, like, I think it's more about this is raising the floor, it's not this what is being put into place is not a ceiling, it's raising the floor. I think that they're still allowing for I don't think this is a be all and end all, what is being proposed to their better chicken
Mhm.
commitment, but I think it's a really fantastic start.
It's
Uh,
progress,
it is
plain
progress.
and simple.
Yeah.
And, it's really easy to criticize people for all the bad stuff they're doing, but I think it's much more important to say, "Thank you for at least taking a step," because it's gonna make them willing to take the next step.
Exactly. And I think it's just, it's about moving the needle in a direction as opposed to making people change everything overnight. And I think I'm a fan of incrementalism. So,
And they can't change it overnight. I mean,
yeah,
the costs are too high, the logistics are too high, and they can't stay in business while they change. There
yeah,
has to be a way for them to continue to exist and such as they bring in new breeds of chickens and switch the flock over to becoming half something, half Cornish, and so
yeah,
forth.
just and slowly moving. But yeah, I mean, if people are curious as to what this looks like, now I'm blanking on the website, but it's basically betterchickencommitment.com or
Yeah, I'm
something
sure
like
if you
that.
I'm sure,
Yeah,
Janet,
but
find better chicken formula, okay?
yeah, but if people are curious to see, okay, which companies have actually made this
Yeah,
commitment.
I definitely wanna know.
Yeah,
Well,
and I know
what
in terms of like pet companies, I think the only one that I know of is Earth Animals done it too.
mhm,
Has taken the commitment. But the funny thing is, oh, and there's two versions, and they have to do with the big difference is the auditing body,
mhm,
and the auditing body that it has to be. I think it's GAP is the Global Animal Partnership is the auditing body for the more stringent version of
ah,
the better chicken commitment. And we this year we became Global Animal Partnership certified.
great.
Yeah, and the funny thing is we could have done this years ago. We've been with our chicken supplier that for
Yeah,
like 7 years, and they're certified humane, they're GAP, and for some reason we thought it was going to be this huge administrative headache to do it. So we were so intimidated by doing this, but it's like, okay, we're doing this, we should get the
mhm.
credit for it. And then actually getting it was not hard at all because
Yeah, well, and
uh,
sometimes, these administrative hoops to jump through are really challenging. So
yeah,
I hear you on that.
this actually, because we'd been using our specific supplier for so long, we just had to
Yeah,
prove that, like, okay, this is where we're actually buying our chicken.
yeah, here's
So
our receipts.
yeah, so here's the receipts. Literally, here's the receipts.
So here's the place to check out when we wrap, guys. I know I'm going to before I shop next. I'm
Yeah,
just
it's just
curious as
yeah, it's
to what brands can I now say I would choose this over that?
yeah, and it's not that some of like I think like I said, I think it's Tyson is as terms of like big chicken suppliers. But it's interesting, and I'm glad that
Mhm.
this initiative and like there are some hardcore animal welfare groups like involved in this. Like,
That's interesting.
ones that you'd think of, but then like ones that do like crazy like break into chicken house level investigative journalism. And
Yeah,
they're into this. And one thing that I find interesting is a lot of these welfare groups, and we talk with a lot of welfare groups because we want to learn more. We want to know how we as a pet food company can be involved.
mhm,
And what's amazing is how many of these groups, like everyone working at these groups is vegan, but they understand that they're not just going to convert people overnight, that it's
yeah,
better to do what they can to improve the lives of farmed animals as
mhm,
opposed to just like no one should eat meat. And so it's really interesting at these organizations where they're just about what they do on farms. Um,
yeah. Well,
it's
and I think the folks who are, I'm gonna use the term missionary vegetarians or missionary vegans, they need to realize that their people are still going to eat meat. So your point about incremental change and, what if you had one meal that didn't contain meat? Would you survive? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is I am a meat eater. I actually use Evermore as the standard. Like if it's if it's good enough for Evermore, then it's good enough for me. Like I try not to eat below the
Mhm.
threshold of what would
Yeah.
go into Evermore. And I have to say that's a really high standard. Um
Yeah.
just in terms of what we do.
But it's easy enough to have tomato soup and a grilled cheese, and that's a vegetarian lunch.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm vegetarian most of my meals, and the meat I get is a lot of times just from the farm around the corner, which I love.
Beautiful.
But not everyone has that option.
True,
So,
true.
so it's important to know. And so, in terms of welfare, I like to say the best thing to do, obviously, is to go to a farmer's market and talk to the people raising the meat. If you can't do that and you are looking for certifications, there's different. Now I'm trying to remember this website. There's like some really good. Not all certifications are created
Mhm.
equal. Like people are used to seeing like, oh, there's a stamp on a box.
Yeah.
That means something. And they don't necessarily all mean the same things. And I wish I came prepared with this website. There's a couple of websites that have like really great rankings of what these things mean.
Mhm.
What I like about Gap, the one of the ones that we have for the one that we have with our poultry, is they have different steps, right?
Mhm.
And you can see like, there's step 1 and step 2, which are, their indoor practices, and our turkey step 2. I wish it were higher, but it's literally impossible to find.
Yep.
Um, and our chicken step 3, and step 3 is indoors, but they have outdoor access and like these very enriched environments. Then when you get to step 4 or higher, that's pasture centric, right? Like
Mhm.
the entire life of the animal is spent, outdoors, or, in the
Also
case of
the
in the
day.
case of chicken, they have like chicken houses, so it's not like they have to have access to shelter, right? Um, but
Well, and with depending on predation, you
oh,
know,
everything eats
gotta
chicken. Um,
no, but, if you're out in a pasture and there are foxes around or what have you, you've gotta be locked up at night
Oh,
or
yeah, no, they lock them up at night. I mean, like, during
they're
the day.
disgusting.
It's
Yeah,
not it's not that they're
yeah.
not protected, but they have the opportunity to go outside and live their lives and exhibit their natural behaviors, and,
Mhm.
and eat all the weird stuff. Chicken I have to say this, like, pretty much every time I get on and talk to you, but I had to learn the hard way that chickens eat just about everything, including
Mhm.
other chickens.
Yep.
I
Other chickens, eggs,
Yeah,
um,
they're savage.
they are.
When I was doing
Closer
research.
to dinosaurs than anything.
They are. Actually, chickens are the closest living relative to T-Rex,
Yep.
which is my absolute favorite chicken fact, and you can really see
Mhm.
it when they're walking around. Um, but anyway, so we use GAP as our certifying body. The poultry that we use is also certified humane, um, and we'll probably get that on our boxes at some point.
Great.
But the eggs that we use are also 100% pastured,
Mhm.
and that's really, I think, and eggs are another, place where there are really, really cruel practices. But the eggs that we use are 100% pastured, and again, the omega ratios are so much better on pastured
Yes.
eggs.
Yeah.
And one thing that we found, and I cannot find anything in the literature about this, but we used to have to supplement choline,
Mhm.
and when we switched to pastured eggs, our choline numbers like completely changed.
Yeah.
And we actually didn't have to supplement choline anymore. And it's just miraculous, like getting that evidence that these things that in theory
And
are
choline
true.
is deficient in a lot of these raw diets. Steve Brown and I, whenever we talk, he's all about the choline and
Pastured eggs.
pastured eggs. But the 80-10-10 folks and the prey model, they don't want to feed eggs. And it's really hard to get the choline levels where they should be.
I actually did not know that, but that's because I'm not a premodel 80-10-10
Yeah.
person.
No, no, there's such a spectrum of what people will feed when they're doing a DIY, whether it's cooked or raw. Um, I had one lady who absolutely refused to use oysters, and it's like oysters are a great food source of a lot of different hard to find minerals and
One of
vitamins.
the things we were looking into, actually. But
It
I mean,
just
we have some hesitation about putting like shellfish into our
yeah,
food. But it is something that we've definitely explored.
but
Uh,
it's, when you're fighting that battle of I don't wanna use synthetics or supplements, these little niche products, whether they're nuts, Brazil nuts, oysters, sardines, they're handy and they're a way that the consumer in any part of the country can lay their hands on those ingredients.
yeah, it's interesting because we have been looking at all of these niche ingredients, and for every pro, there's also a con. So it's
Right.
just like, where
Well,
do you?
and people that are shellfish allergic, just spooning it out, they could get
That's
an allergic
actually
exposure.
That was actually our big, our hugest hesitation with using
Yeah.
oyster products. We actually had a customer, her kid was allergic to eggs, which is not a common food allergy,
No,
but
no.
her dog, after eating, licked her son's face,
Oh,
and he went into anaphylactic shock.
oh my god, I wouldn't have
Yeah,
thought that was possible.
yeah, like, I mean, she loved our food, but she had to stop using it because of that, and the thought of putting shellfish into our food, which is so much more common of an allergen,
Mhm. Yeah,
so that, that kind of, we keep
yeah,
going back and forth on it, but that story was such a horror story,
yeah.
and,
I mean, I guess with proper labeling and everything and
yeah.
separating production, you could, but maybe there's another ingredient that can
Yeah,
get the
believe me, we're looking. If it's out there,
yeah,
eventually we'll
and
find
say
it.
gluconate is not the end of the
Yeah,
world.
I don't think so either. It's like, you know what, and you know what, our cat food's gonna need supplements, and that's just unfortunately, it's the reality. I'd love to do
Right.
everything with food, but I also don't think there's anything wrong with what we're using.
No, as long as you're getting the highest quality
Oh yeah,
and you're
US, high
thoughtful about it.
quality,
Yeah,
everything's tested.
yeah.
So, you know, it's tested before, it's tested after, and it goes in with the eggshell powder that we
Mhm.
use for our calcium source.
Yeah, yeah.
There was one more fact I wanted to share. I'm trying to think of what it was.
So
We keep
your current formulas are chicken, turkey, beef, and
lamb.
lamb. Okay.
Lamb is from New Zealand.
Yep.
Everything else is US. It's really hard to actually get 100% grass-fed lamb in the US, because there's very few places where just the terrain is right,
Mhm.
and it's actually more expensive to get US lamb than
Then
it
New
is to get
Zealand's
New Zealand. Oh, Janet on the cat food. Honestly, I wish I could have a definitive answer. We have test batches out. We're doing palatability right now. So we keep going, you know, it's a process, the cat food. But I actually have a test batch coming to the East Coast in I mean, I think it's gonna be here next week. And then I have a lot of volunteer cats, and I have like to drive all of this cat food to all these different people and do these palatability tests where I hope people can follow instructions because I thought originally that it was like, oh, just will the cat eat the food or will the cat not eat the food? But there's this whole thing where you have to put the food and something else they've never been exposed to next to each other and see what they do.
Mhm.
Um, but it is going to be all life stages, which, you know, getting an adult cat that's been eating kitty crack its entire life,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard to get them to switch. But if you get them while they're young, oh, okay. I'm just looking at the description. Protein, duck, rabbit. We would love to do a novel protein, and I'm sure we will at some point. The sourcing, not just from a quantity standpoint, but finding these novel proteins um, at
Mhm.
the quality, just in terms of the animals being raised well, is really that's really really difficult. Didn't Answer start their own duck farm because they couldn't
I think
find?
one of the Amish farmers might have back in the day, and I
Yeah,
know the folks at Viva Raw had a heck of a time. They searched for 2 years for a rabbit source.
yeah, it's we I mean, we found rabbit. The problem, I mean, with a raw food, it's actually much easier to do rabbit because not to be, you know, too explicit, but you just throw the whole rabbit in like
Yeah,
in a grinder,
bones.
but
Well, yeah,
small
you're
animal.
grinding the bones.
Yeah, but, like, with a smaller animal like that, again, there's, like, no, quote, "undesirable cuts," and we do
Right.
need the meat off a small animal, but we would like to do novel protein. It's definitely on the wish list. Um, but it's
Yeah.
not happening right away. I think prior to that, we will be working on cat food and puppy food, and
Mhm.
then get those novel proteins in there.
Definitely.
Some companies do, like, wild boar now. Have you seen that?
I've seen some of that, yeah.
Because there's that whole, again, like, we're not doing pig, but there is that whole thing where, like, the invasive, like, the escaped wild boars that are all over the place, and
Yeah,
there are some pet food companies
that
doing.
are using them.
Yeah, I don't think as a human grade company we can do that, but it's definitely a thing people are doing.
Yeah, I don't know. Because you could probably say, well, they're drug free, they're hormone free. Um,
I don't think from, like, a USDA
yeah, I don't
standpoint.
know if you could get them in the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, I just don't know how that works.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I do have like a reasonable amount of customers on here, which I'm really happy about.
Isn't
Thank
that
you so
cool?
much for, yeah, it's really cool getting to see the names I recognize from, you know, from the
Yeah.
orders that come through.
And, bison is the other, new protein that's relatively I mean,
That's
most
relatively easy, I think,
bison
bison.
are free range because nobody's, like, bringing them in the barn.
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna like wrangle that.
No, no, even the calves, I don't think you want to,
Yeah, you don't wanna mess with a
mess
bison.
with them.
Trying to think. Does anyone else have any other questions? I could talk forever. I mean, there's so many little rabbit holes I go
Well, and you'll
down.
have the whole weekend to talk at the expo.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Janet, I do know that Dr. Judy is speaking. I didn't realize till this morning, and
That
I
she had
looked on.
jumped
Okay.
on our time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
But yeah,
we all listen to each other,
yeah. I'm
live
glad there'll
and
be a
on
replay.
replay.
Maybe you can edit that part where I just kind of like am wiping my nose and glitch out
Oh,
for a minute.
we'll fix it up, no problem.
You can take that out for the replay. Any other questions? Because I think we're almost on the hour.
Yeah, we're almost on the hour. And this is Michelle's comment is beautiful. Because this is, I mean, whatever you call it, things came together the way they had to make your company possible. And here you are out here, pushing the envelope and raising the floor, as you said, or raising the bar for better animal treatment in the production of the food, and better health for our dogs with eating better food.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking to someone over at the ASPCA,
Mhm.
and ASPCA has a huge farm animal welfare aspect to them, but people
Yeah,
don't think about that. They think about about cats and dogs. They
yeah.
think about animals up for
Homeless
adoption.
animals.
Yeah, but they also have like a farm welfare task force. And it's interesting, they're actually going to start focusing more on pet food because that's a way to sort of educate people who are there for the cats and dogs, but to
Mhm.
learn about, it kind of segues into thinking about those farming practices. It's like, oh, my pets are animals. Oh, here's other animals that could use my help.
Yeah,
And if people are interested in kind of like learning more about farmed animals, you can go on the ASPCA website and look at what they're doing. There's a lot of legislation.
interesting.
Yeah, and I think there are, obviously everyone knows about Prop 12 with the Supreme Court, which maybe everyone doesn't know, but California Proposition 12 outlawed gestation crates for
Mhm.
pigs, and basically any pork products sold in the state would not be allowed to involve gestation crates. Pork producers didn't like this. It's
Yeah,
gone all the way to the Supreme Court. Can California outlaw this? And I don't think there's been a ruling on it yet,
yeah.
but that's going to have major implications for
For
animal
those of you
welfare.
who don't know what a gestation crate is, basically it's total and complete confinement for that pregnant pig, and through nursing everything, she doesn't get to move.
I read it described as like, imagine being in like an economy class like airplane seat for your entire life, like on Spirit
Mhm.
Airlines. So
While you go through the whole
while
reproduction,
you're pregnant and giving birth, like,
birth and nursing babies, and yeah, it's not anything I would want to support.
yeah, no. Anyway, the reason I bring it up is the ASPCA website. They kind of keep people up to date on all of these, on all of like the farm welfare initiatives, all the stuff that's
Mhm.
happening in Congress. There's like petitions you can sign.
Yeah,
They give you templates to write to your Congress people. So if you do want to become involved on that level, there's a lot of great resources out there, and I think the ASPCA is a really great place to start.
that's
Um,
terrific.
they have their Shop with Your Heart program, and we're on it. So they have listings of like different companies that sell animal welfare kind of approved products, and those products do have to be certified. I think that there are other ways that you can shop with your heart that don't involve stuff on the list, but I think it is an
Mhm.
incredible resource.
Yeah, but it's a good point. What we give our money to will get bigger. So let's put our money where things that we want to get bigger.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, voting with your dollars, as they say.
As they
And
say, yeah.
yes, um, so I think
And
that's really important.
for our dogs, it's, getting them healthier.
Yeah, and it's getting the planet healthier, and I just think it's bringing you more in tune with being, a sentient being that respects other sentient beings.
Indeed.
And that's my TED Talk.
And there you go. The Friday afternoon TED Talk and inspirational message direct from Evermore and the Healthy Dog Expo.
And
Go
oh, sorry,
ahead.
God. I was gonna say, and I have one more of these.
Oh,
I
you
have
do?
no, I have no, yeah, because remember the sponsorship of, I think I have three of
Yeah,
these,
yeah.
but I have no idea what I'm going to talk about.
So, guys,
Yeah.
comment. Tell us what you want to hear.
Yeah,
you know,
please.
because yeah, it is coming up fast and we need ideas.
I mean, we can talk about regenerative farming. So that's a good one. Earth Day is coming up. But trying to anyway, if people
Oh,
have
yeah.
ideas about what I should talk about, please share.
Comment on the website, comment on our Facebook link, whatever works for you, we'll find it.
Yeah, and don't be a stranger. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us via Facebook. You can email us from our website. I read all of those emails. There's only 3 of us in the company, so we all get to read everything.
Yep.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Evermore Pet Food, Facebook Evermore Pet Food, and that's how you can follow us.
Easy enough. All right, guys, have a fabulous weekend. Go buy your expo tickets. Hanna, you get your hotel room so you guys have to stay. And we will see you all in May, but we'll see you back here first. Take care, guys.
Look forward to seeing you all.